all. I, Dr. Aditi Bapte, on behalf of ICSSR, welcome you to the second lecture of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav series. I would like to begin this August program by reciting some beautiful lines as penned by Sri Ravindranath Tagore. Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of death habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever-widening thought and action, into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake. The 75 years of independence and the struggle behind it brought the Indians and their diversity together. And Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav is a reminder and a way forward for the people of India. As to when differences come together, only then big things are bound to happen. Today, ICSSR has the honor to welcome our chief guest, Sri R. Subrahmanyam, Secretary, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India, speaking on India's experience of ensuring social justice and empowerment and the tasks ahead. To begin the program formally, may I invite Sri R. Subrahmanyam and Professor J.K. Bajaj sir, the chairman of ICSSR, to please grace us with their presence on the dais. I would also like to request Professor Bajaj to please welcome Sri R. Subrahmanyam with a bouquet of flowers.
Mr. Subrahmanyam is really not a guest in the ICSSR because he was Secretary Education for several years, and he is where I am working. He is the secretary there, so he is one of us, not really a guest. So this bouquet could have been avoided.
Yes. Now it is my pleasure to invite Professor V.K. Malhotra, Member Secretary ICSSR, to give the welcome address and a brief introduction about ICSSR as well. Please, sir.
Thank you, Aditi. So I welcome you all in this August program, which is under ECOM series, in fact, and none other than Shri R. Subrahmanyam ji is there to deliver this lecture on India's experience of ensuring social justice and empowerment and the task ahead. As Professor Bajaj very rightly said, that Shri Subrahmanyam ji is not a guest, he is one among us. And I remember at least we had an opportunity to work together. The impressive scheme that we were made, the administering authority, or we implemented, I remember in several meetings that we had between us, we discussed how impress could be brought about, what were the nitty-gritties, how to have a fair, transparent, and scientific evaluation procedure also. And since he himself is a social scientist, it gives us definitely an added feeling that we can think about the elevation of social science in terms of researchers and also in terms of policy contribution. As far as very brief introduction of Shri R. Subrahmanyam is concerned, he is Secretary, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India. He has also been Secretary, Ministry of Education, as Professor Bajaj just said. He studied his BA Economics at Madras Christian College, Chennai, and earned his MA and MPhil in International Politics from Jawaharlal Nehru University. He has an MBA in International Business from Indian Institute of Foreign Trade. He visited the University of Bradford, UK on a Commonwealth Fellowship and obtained MSc in Macroeconomics. In his home cadre of Andhra Pradesh, he has headed the Rural Development Department, and as MD of the State Housing Corporation, he implemented the Indramma housing scheme aimed at creating hut-free state. He has served as a Special Secretary in the Ministry of HRD, as Joint Secretary, Government of India, and Principal Secretary, Government of Andhra Pradesh. Thank you, Aditi.
Dear sir, we welcome you to please enlighten us with your lecture. Thank you, sir.
Yes, please. I'll speak later.
Dr. Bajaj, Professor Malhotra, friends here, Aditi. Good to be back here. It's almost like a homecoming. But of course, it's with a difference. You know, speaking to social scientists, lecturing to social scientists can be an ultimate test for anybody. Because of two reasons. One is that social scientists are, generally grim, as Dr. Bajaj is saying. They think that all the problems in the world, they are there to solve. So naturally, grimness comes in. Second thing is, of course, they are always, large number of them are ideologically oriented. Nothing wrong in ideology as an instrument has always worked well. I mean, that's a framework in which an academic analysis is done. But largely, I think positions are taken on the basis of ideology, and therefore, the real fun begins then. So that when ideological positions are taken and then there is a lot of discussion, the discussion extends to late in the night over a cold cup of tea. I'm just remembering my JNU days. So, friends, it's both an opportunity, it's a pleasure and also a test, and I'm sure a few things I'm very sure. I mean, I don't want to pretend to be an academician, although I think Malhotra have said that he is a social scientist, but I would like to, it's out of his affection for me. So I don't want to do any pretension that I'll be a social scientist. I would like to share with you my experiences in this particular sector, and probably look for some sort of a interaction, questions and suggestions, which are, I'm sure, always would add to my knowledge and probably help a lot in shaping up policies. Friends, I'm very happy to hear that a series of lectures have started on the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. Similarly, there is a big exercise that's happening across all the ministries, all the departments, on what should be the vision of the country by 2047. We'll be completing 100 years of independence. So where do you think we should be positioning ourselves at the end of this 100th year? So this is a great opportunity for us to really look critically as to what we have done, and through a lot of discussion, develop a vision for some sort of a long-term vision for the country as a whole. We have in this particular sector, we have certain successes which we should celebrate, certain failures which we should take note, and of course, at the end of it, we should really come out with some sort of a vision for future. But what bothers me is, when we are really talking in terms of fast growing economy, a $5 trillion economy, a rapidly progressing infrastructural sector, banking sector, and a lot of focus on industries, which are all important for a sustained growth of the country. But in this entire process, what I found is, over a period of time, the discussion about the poverty, extreme poverty, deprivation, has actually has got out of the mainstream discourse, even in the social sciences sector segments. Definitely, in terms of the mainstream discussion in the country, the talk about the poverty has actually gone down. The reasons could be many. One is that the glitz of a fast-paced progress, which everybody wants to identify with. Even the poorest person wants to identify. His aspirations are to identify with the growing middle class. The second thing, more positively, could be that the number of the poor itself as a segment in the population has come down, declined very rapidly. The recent World Bank report you would have all read, it is well published, well publicized, that between 2011 and 2019, the percentage of the people below poverty line has more than halved. So it is one of the most rapid declines of poverty across anywhere in the world. I have my own explanation as to why this decline has happened, but the fact remains that the poor as a constituency within the country has actually shrunk. That is some reason to celebrate, but it is also a cause of concern that despite this progress, a substantial number, I would not say, 10% of a population of our size is substantial number. Substantial number of people are still what we call as impoverished. On the multidimensional poverty scale, if you put, there are people who are facing multiple deprivations. So therefore, I think when we are really taking stock of where we have reached and where we should go, I think we must really look at the most deprived section of this of the population. And I strongly believe that any social advancement, any economic advancement, can never be complete unless the last man in the line is adequately addressed. So I think that's the ultimate test for a country's development scenario. So when we are saying the last man in the line, this is a very cliched statement. What are we saying by last man in the line? Several categories. In fact, I was addressing a similar forum organized by World Bank just a few days back about extreme poverty. Extreme poverty existing in certain islands which require a specialized treatment is something which I would like to focus on. So what are the islands that we are talking about? If you really classify them on 5 different scales, one is of course the caste and community based deprived groups, the usual SC and ST populations we have seen, and then marginalized communities like DNTs, denotified tribes, nomadic tribes, and semi-nomadic tribes. These are ones which face special deprivations and therefore require a special strategy. Then physicality based deprivations, we have a substantial number of Divyang community which face various types of difficulties in matching up to in going to the starting line itself of a race for development. Then we also have a substantial number of senior citizens, and this number is going up. We are really looking at a 15 crore senior citizens today in the country. And then this number is going to grow very fast. The theory of demographic dividend, all of you have read, I don't need to mention. that our demographic dividend window is going to slowly close post 2030. And then, so therefore, the number of the people who are senior citizens above 60 years will keep on increasing. And then, therefore, you need to invest more on their welfare. So this is physicality based. So I'm classifying senior citizens as one of the groups which face disadvantages and therefore should be part of the entire discourse. The third, of course, is the occupation based. So the entire Safai Karmacharis who face extremely difficult situations at their work level, the rag pickers, the vagrants, and then roadside vendors, all occupation based, people who face disadvantages based on their occupation. Then you have gender based, the entire transgender, for example, entire transgender community who face substantial amount of difficulties in getting accepted into the society as a whole, thrown out of the households and then not being accepted in the society. So this is one section of population which we and then women as a whole, as they face disadvantages, especially when they are coming out to challenge the male supremacy. So they face more and more difficulties. So gender based. Then situation based. There are certain categories who get into a marginalized or a difficult or a deprived sections because of the situation. Like, for example, the entire victims of the drug abuse, for example. And this is not a small number. It used to be a small number sometime, but it's spreading very rapidly. We are talking in terms of 7 crore people who are affected by the drug abuse. And then if you really look at the people who are victims of the liquor addiction, that will run into more than 10 crores. So these are all situations, they are actually there because of certain situation. In fact, the analysis of the people who take to drugs is that they are basically depressed because of certain instances, certain challenges that they face, and then because they don't get adequate attention at the right time, they take to this sort of a drug. So this is again a situation based category which requires. So I would say that the people whom I am classifying in these 5 different categories probably constitute what should be the focus of the society as a whole. If you really want to go for an inclusive, we are talking about inclusive growth. So when we are really talking about this, last man in the line approach, how do you measure whether this person or these persons are improving? And how do you really look at, how do you measure? Is it possible to measure their improvement from year to year? Of course, one very rudimentary effort that has been made, extensive, but I would say that it could be refined, is a socio-economic caste census which happened in 2011. I have been part of that effort, and I have seen it happening at the field level, and it is a very comprehensive exercise. It's a very comprehensive exercise to look at various deprivations of the households and then classify them based on the deprivations, number of points of deprivation that they have faced. And for the first time, probably we have evolved a multidimensional poverty index which is comprehensive, which is household based. It is not sample based. It's a census approach. So therefore, it had the advantage of being a complete list, and also a list which can be used for implementing various developmental programs. Of course, Ministry of Rural Development has made extensive use of that. Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, for example, is completely dependent on the SCCC's data. But of course, this particular measure itself requires a lot of refinement, and whether we will be able to refine, whether we will be able to repeat it, is a matter which is still unclear. But I think 5 aspects that I would like to mention today, and each of them can be a 3-hour session if you want to really discuss it. So, but I would like to, like most civil servants, so let me just touch the touch the top of it rather than going into the depth of it. That's for all of you to go into it. So, first, of course, is the social empowerment. I mean, what is that? What do you mean by social empowerment? And how can we measure the status of these deprived sections on a social empowerment scale? This is the first question. Second, economic empowerment. That's a very obvious thing, that they should have adequate means to live a dignified life. Can we measure this? The third is educational empowerment. There are various measures for this. The entire GER in higher education, for example, is one very good measure for educational empowerment. We'll come to that in a little while, in a little bit more detail. Then political empowerment, exactly where these deprived sections are there on the political map. Are they sitting in a chair? I have seen many cases where the sarpanchas who are elected on the women's reservation or on SC reservation, they sit down, and the person who has actually got them elected sits on the chair. So where in this map of political empowerment they are figuring? Are they figuring on a measure of equality, or they still suffer in servitude? Then empowerment to health. So this is a very important aspect. I have seen many households who have just got into complete debt because of a adverse health condition of a near and dear. So these 5 empowerment: social empowerment, economic empowerment, educational empowerment, political empowerment, and empowerment through health. I think I would like to give these 5 measures to see whether these deprived sections are making progress or they are stalled where they are. If we can just start with a social empowerment, of course, I think we have a burden of history. We have a burden of history because we have kept large sections of the population away from education. We have hierarchical system of castes, where certain castes are considered higher, certain castes are considered lower, certain types of works cannot be done by others. So there are, I'm not going into genesis of this. Probably the origin of every system is good, but then we have to look at how in practice what has happened is that large number of people got kept out of the developmental process, and then untouchability. Untouchability is the most shameful thing, probably. I think almost apartheid sort of a situation we have faced and we are facing, with probably some amount of improvement. And so this is the context in which when the country has come in, this is the context in which it's found itself to be. But I think to be to our credit, I feel that a large part of the constitution, I won't say large part, a substantial portion of the constitution of India is devoted towards providing, recognizing this aspect and providing specific provisions for bringing in social equality. I mean, I start with Article 17, of course, is a very completely without any ambiguity. It has banned the untouchability, and of course the entire series of legislations has followed. Then Article 15(4), you have seen, it's an enabling provision which has provided for making special provisions for the socially and educationally backward communities. Then Article 15(5), Article 16(4), 16(5), these are all specific articles which have been inserted in order to provide a preferential treatment to the deprived sections so that they would reach up to the mainstream and then compete with others on an equal footing. This is, I think, a very extremely bold step for a young nation like this, and I'm really quite proud of these provisions and the way that they have been kept up. Then for the scheduled tribes, we have seen the entire Schedule 5 is there. Substantial number of provisions have been given for protection of the scheduled tribes in the constitution. And from the constitution followed a legislative action, series of legislations. In fact, I think you should enlighten us as to, if you really look at the number of legislations passed by the parliament and by the state legislatures, what percentage of it would really pertain to a welfare of the deprived or backward. Substantial number. I would still say that, because I was just counting the number of legislations which are landmark legislations which have actually based themselves in the welfare of the people. Of course, the PCR Act, Protection of Civil Rights Act, 1955, and then Prevention of Atrocities Act of 1989. It has been redone in 2015. It has expanded, made more stringent for trial of offences and for providing of relief and rehabilitation for the people who are victims of untouchability and similar offences. And this applies to the tribals also. Then the Forest Rights Act of 2006, one of the very landmark legislations again, because the tribals' existence is with forest. They live in forest, they work with forest, and then probably they live for forest. So the Forest Rights Act has recognized this particular relationship between the tribals and the forest, and this Forest Rights Act, of course, the implementation of it can become better, but then the act itself is extremely powerful and well drafted. Then we have the various acts which have come, creating the National Commission for SCs, National Commission for STs, National Commissions for BCs, National Commission for Minorities, and National Commission for Safai Karmcharis. So I think each of these deprived categories, there is a National Commission that has been set up by an act of parliament. And except for the National Commission for Safai Karmcharis, all of them are constitutional, and NCM also. The NCSC, NCST, and NCPC are constitutional bodies. So they have the power to summon people. So they can try any government, non-governmental organization. So it's a very powerful setup that has been given in order to protect the rights of the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes and the BCs. The entire labor legislations, plethora of legislations, hundreds of legislations have been made to protect the labor, especially labor in the unorganized sector and also in organized sector. And these legislations, as you know, are being made into 4 labor codes, and there is a lot of discussion about these labor codes, how good are they, and so the debate should continue. And then we have lots of legislations which prevent child labor, bonded labor, and then Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, 2016. And of course, the entire reservations, the field of reservations, which has been a matter of big debate across, but it has provided an opportunity for the completely downtrodden sections to enter the premier institutions and sit on equal footing along with others. It has changed the character of the institutions. There is so much of confidence that it has brought about. There are difficulties. We are all aware of how the difficulties that a downtrodden person faces when he sits in the class with all the others, probably not as well endowed. So there are difficulties which we need to address, but then the fact remains that today the premier institutions are not the exclusive domains of only a few privileged sections. So it is now opened up, and then in IITs, when we did the analysis as Secretary of Education, we found that just about 10% of the total intake are girls. Now I'm talking about gender. And when we really looked at it, why is it that the girls are equally smart? If you really look at the 12th class performance, the girls' performance is always better than the boys' performance. But then when it comes to entry into these premier institutions, we find that they are just 10%. So this entire matter was discussed, and it was found that only because they are not sent for this long-term coaching for the IITs, which seems to be the key to open the doors to the IIT. So because they don't get sent, so they don't perform as well in this competitive examination. So we had to bring in a quota within quota in order to raise this to 20%. So today I'm so happy to see that within a matter of three years, the number of people, girl students who are entering these premier institutions has doubled. So reservations in the academic institutions has actually brought in a substantial change of these institutions, their outlook, and then it has added to confidence of these downtrodden sections who otherwise were excluded from this sort of privileges. Then, of course, coming to the senior citizens, we have the Maintenance of Senior Citizens Act 2007, where anybody who ill-treats, I mean any son or a daughter, or any person who is supposed to take care of the senior citizen, if they ill-treat, if they abuse, if they don't if they don't take care properly, then they can be ordered to pay maintenance, and if they don't pay the maintenance, they can even be punished with imprisonment. So this act has come. So we have, I just quoted a few legislations. As I said, that substantial number of legislations that our bodies, legislative bodies have enacted, they all pertain to providing dignity to the deprived section. So I think on this particular aspect, the legislatures have really led everybody else in terms of providing equal access to these sections. However, any legislation is as good as what it does, how it is implemented, and there are varied experiences. There is varied experiences, act to act. There are changes, there are differences. State to state there are changes, and within the state, district to district there are changes in terms of the effectiveness with which an act is implemented. A lot depended on how good the implementing officialdom is there at the district level, which of course is not a very nice way to describe an implementation, because I think implementation should happen as per a good system. I just wanted to bring to your, as a case, the Prevention of Atrocities Act of which is revamped in 2015. So how to implement this? So what the government has done is that along with the act, it has also brought in a scheme. The purpose of the scheme is to provide various opportunities for appropriate implementation of this act. I'll tell you one example. Now, Atrocities Act depends on how quickly an atrocity is reported and how well it is acted upon. So for this, there is no centralized mechanism. So what the government has done is that it has started a national helpline against atrocities. So with a 14567. So 14566 number. So anybody who faces an atrocity can call, and then that call is monitored, and then once the call is registered, the progress of filing of FIR, the progress of trial, investigation, filing of charge sheet, trial, everything gets monitored by an automated system. So, and providing funds for this will really help in proper implementation of this act. Similarly, anybody who is a person who is a victim of atrocity always can claim compensation. So the compensation has been laid down in great detail, and my friend Gyanandar is here, Joint Secretary of the NCSC. So they keep monitoring whether a person who is a victim, has he got the compensation or not. So a system has been established in order to properly implement this act. So I think similar things can probably happen for other acts also, and I think it's so I think time for us to celebrate what we have done in terms of legislative business, but also look at how to how to properly implement these acts, because I think finally that's what would decide whether the act is of use or not. Now, looking ahead socially, I would say that we are really, by 2047, we said that there should not be any requirement for different departments for SCs, for STs, for minorities, for women. So that the deprivation levels have to be brought down to such a minuscule level that the relevance of this department should automatically wither away. So this is like that ideological withering away of the state, which never happened. But then the point remains that's an ideal with which I think we can really look at. We are really looking at a casteless society, what Ambedkar has dreamed, a casteless society where everybody is associated by their name, by their identity, and not by their caste identity, where everybody gets adequate opportunities to pursue the field of their choice. So all this would it's possible. I think by 2047, if there is a specific effort for this, I think it is possible. There has to be affirmative action, and I think affirmative action covering all the people who face various disadvantages, and I think we can move towards a casteless society is what I consider as my ultimate dream, and probably we'll see it during our lifetime. Moving to the economic empowerment, I think that's one barometer with which everybody keeps measuring your poverty levels. Ending of poverty has been there in the discourse even prior to independence. So all the people who have fought for independence, they have all dreamt of a India without poverty, and substantial amount of writings are there, ideological based also, and then some very practical based. So, but however, I think till about turn of the century, I think the efforts that have been made for ending of this extreme poverty have actually met with very poor success. The reasons are very, very clear, because the founding philosophy at that time was that it is for the state, that is the government, to invest enough money in order to bring the people out of poverty. So all these IRDP type of schemes have all come in large numbers. IRDP, of course, is a national level, but then at state level there are similar schemes which have been brought in, and where the government became the MAI-BAP. So they distributed largesse to the people, and as we can see, that it has not succeeded. The poverty elimination has not happened, or no substantial progress we could see in the efforts against poverty. But there are two things which really have changed this scenario. I can see it myself, 37 years of experience at the field level, working primarily with the tribals in the rural areas. I found that just two things have really changed this substantially. The first thing is the entire movement of the self-help groups by the women. Now, the poor have thus far believed that they are in a vicious cycle, they can never come up. They have no identity, they have no hope, they have no weight in the society nor in the political system. For the first time, when the women who are otherwise considered completely useless, when they came together, they found that they are not only useful to themselves, to the society, to the family, they can make change. I have seen the self-help groups bringing change in front of my eyes in a very short period. The women coming together, saving 1 rupee a day, sitting together, discussing on various aspects, understanding the social dynamics, and then building a social capital which people would stand up and notice. So when in 1996, when we have started this in East Godavari district of Andhra, so when this whole thing said, then MLA said that ये तो चलते रहता है, तो ये collector साहब तो ऐसे he will go anyway, तो उसके साथ ये भी चला जाएगा. So that was their hope, but it didn't happen like that, because the women found that when they came together, they have a huge advantage. They have a huge advantage of numbers. They have a huge advantage of aspirations. They have a huge advantage of a collective action. They found that together they can make a difference. Otherwise, no woman, if he goes to the bank manager would not even waste their time. Because they don't have creditworthiness, इनके पास कुछ नहीं है, तो ये इससे तुम्हारा पति को लेके आओ, बात करते हैं. वो पति तो कभी आएगा नहीं, वो तो पी के पड़ाएगा ही. Or he would have already taken a loan and then he is a defaulter. So they lived in a state of hopelessness. So when the self-help groups came together, they saved, they lent within themselves, and then they recollected that money. They found that, yes, it is possible. It is possible to come out of poverty. It is possible to address their requirements. It is possible to create a credit history. Otherwise, they have no credit history. So together, this group has created a credit history. Today, they are parts of a proud partner of a banking system. You know how much money the self-help groups together they take from the bank every year? Any guess? Any guess? It's more than 1 lakh crores. More than 1 lakh crores of money is taken from the banking system by the self-help groups in order to take up productive activities. And it's all done not because they have any properties to mortgage. It happens because they have a social capital. A social capital which they find is far more appreciative. I mean, the banking system is far more appreciative of a social capital than having a property as a mortgage. So, self-help groups have, therefore, by accessing their due share from the banking system, have managed to invest it. So, we have done a study of where they are investing. 1 lakh crores, where is it going? So, we found that a large number of them are actually investing in education. I have seen with my own eyes, the real poor, completely illiterate women, Chittoor district, let us say in Andhra, have taken this money, put their child in a coaching institution. That's again is our bane, of course, but it's a reality. And then that chap has got into IITs or NITs or studied medicine. And then 7 years, 8 years later, I saw that lady just is going to the airport to US to be with their son. So just imagine a person who is completely stuck in a SC locality, in a most backward area, with no hope, with no future, probably no past also, nothing. Today, she is able to say that my son is working in US, and then he has invited me to be with him. I'm not saying going to US is a great thing. I'm saying that look at the flight of aspiration, how the transformation has occurred in the lives of a person. And this transformation has not come because of government. It has not come because of government. Of course, government has facilitated in forming of this. But it has not come because of the government subsidy. Contrary to what people thought, that economic progress is not possible unless government gives subsidy. Wherever there is subsidy, there is only a politician or somebody who is trying to siphon off. So where there is a genuine people participation, we found that there was progress. So this is one self-help group movement, which is subsequently became National Rural Livelihood Mission. It is now far more structured, and then I think it has really accounted for a rapid decline of poverty in this country. And probably I think if you just look back onto the World Bank report, it will not. It's not too difficult to find out why 2011 to 2019, in 8-year period, there is such a rapid decline of poverty. The second thing that has actually brought a huge change in the economic sphere is the NREGA. Now, NREGA has been debated a lot. It has been debated a lot because it has brought impact at the field level. If there is no impact, there is no debate. ऐसा बहुत कुछ legislation है जिस पे कोई बात ही नहीं करता है, वो तो legislation कागज पे है. But this is one program which has actually gone to the ground, where it has got implemented. Thousands of crores has been invested by the government, of course, but then it has gone to providing choices to the people. See, think of this change, fundamental change it has brought about in the labor relations at the village level. Earlier, it is all completely bonded. See, there is nothing, no bonded बोल के कोई कागज पे लिखा नहीं रहता है. But इसको कोई और चारा नहीं है. He has to go for work to a particular landlord only. He has no choice. And उसका बेटा भी जाएगा, उसका बेटी भी जाएगी, पत्नी भी जाएगी, सब लोग, everybody will go. That is reality. That is their fate. That's how they accept it. But today, they have an alternative. They have been given a choice of either work in the landlord's field or go for a public work. So this choice has brought in so much of confidence. See, progress occurs only when there is confidence. When there is no confidence, there is no progress. So this has brought in confidence to the people who are landless, who are small farmers. It has provided an investment opportunity to look at small little works which have huge impact. Many of the soil conservation works or water works, for example, water conservation works or plantation works, they are small works. Nobody is bothered, it's not a 10,000 or 30,000 crore 8-lane highway nahi hai. But it has got equal impact or probably more impact because it's actually acting on the ecology of the rural areas. It has led to clearing of boulders in SC lands. I mean, many of you would have seen the rural areas. If you really look at the village map, किसका ज़मीन कहाँ पर है? तो only slopy land, degraded lands, boulder lands belong to SCs. जो irrigated land जो है वो सब पूरा landlords का रहता है. That is normal. There is nothing. If you see that, you will not get shocked because वो तो वैसे ही है. क्यों वैसे ही है? Because इनके पास they don't have historically they are not landowners. They are only workers. तो गवर्नमेंट सेड दैट नहीं, इनको सबको ज़मीन देना चाहिए, गवर्नमेंट लैंड असाइन करो. सो वेयर डू यू असाइन द लैंड? द लैंड गवर्नमेंट लैंड इज ओनली वो हिलक्स, वो ऐसे ही लैंड मिलता है गवर्नमेंट लैंड, तो उसको असाइन कर दिया. तो दे हैव लैंड ऑन पेपर, दे हैव लैंड, बट इट इज ऑफ नो यूज. इट डजंट ग्रो, इट ग्रोस नथिंग. NREGA has managed to bring such lands into cultivation. Just look at the impact that it can bring on one household. If a land is brought under cultivation, if it gets irrigation, then he doesn't need to do anything. I mean, he can work on his own. He doesn't need to किसी के पाँव पे पड़ने का ज़रूरत ही नहीं. Just imagine the quantum of dignity that it brings to a household. That's what it has done. I know there is so much of debate about NREGA. Yesterday I was just coming from a village in Andhra. They said that all landlords came and said that, sir, इसको तो आप बिल्कुल बंदी करिए. Because NREGA के वजह से हमको कोई लेबर मिल रहा ही नहीं. पहले होता था 300 रुपया, अभी तो 1000 रुपया पूछ रहे. I said अच्छी बात है यार, इसको 1000 रुपया उनको चाहिए. तो it's a market, labor market. So there is a lot of discussion about this, but I think this is one program which has actually got a significant impact, more impact than what you and me think at the field level, because I have seen how it operates, especially on the labor relations. When in the COVID time, when the entire population was, everybody was completely the entire system was in pell-mell. So when people started going back to the villages, it is the NREGA program which saved them from further starvation or fights, and also of course the government's free ration, of course, definitely. So friends, I think on the economic front, we have made substantial progress, but I think it is not sufficient. What is the road ahead? I think we need to think beyond these two schemes. We need to really look at how to build entrepreneurship. See, what happened in the self-help groups is that they have got access to bank funding. So they brought bank funding. They invested on many things, education, as I said. But except for the Kerala SHGs, which we call as the Kudumbasri. Any of you heard of Kudumbasri? So except for Kudumbasri, which has invested a lot on entrepreneurship. How you can we increase the productive capacity of these households? That is the question they have asked. And then they said that yes, it can be made. So Kerala women, of course, are exceptional persons. I mean, we all know that. So they have actually used this money in order to promote entrepreneurship. So new products have come, new business ventures have come, new service organizations have come. All have done extremely well. So we need to redefine, we need to break from this 5 lakh cap of the self-help groups and then go towards the entrepreneurship, develop the entrepreneurship so that these people can not only be a very dignified households, but they should actually contribute a lot to the growth of the economy as a whole. There is so much of economic opportunities at the village level. Contrary to what we believe that growth occurs in the urban areas. You know, traditionally, it is a surplus from the rural areas which has fed the urban areas, and that's how it works. So there is so much of growth opportunities which are untapped, which must be tapped. So therefore, I think we should now go beyond the SHGs, build on that social capital, and move towards a livelihood approach where we can really look at how to take them to the next level of entrepreneurship and economic growth. The second thing that I think we need to do, am I doing too badly as far as?
We can go on.
We can go on. Actually, yeah, I know. I think I thought I'm it has to be a professor who has, who can speak for, 1 hour, But I think I'm committing much worse. I'm doing much worse.
No, please go ahead. Don't worry about it.
So the second thing that we need to do in the economic thing is the skill. Now, skill is one area where we went for numbers. We went for large numbers and then very poor quality. So how is it that we can rectify this and make the skills that we learn through this so-called skill development institutions, which are global class? See, it doesn't help to just do some, I see many of these people, they call people 15 days, they'll just change their dress and then teach 10 sentences of English and then वो इंटरव्यू करा देते हैं, तो बोल देता है 10 इंग्लिश वर्ड्स, हो गया, तो उसको नौकरी मिल गया. नेक्स्ट डे उनको पता चलता है कि इसको कुछ आता ही नहीं है अपार्ट फ्रॉम हेलो सर एंड हाउ आर यू सर. So he loses the job. So this sort of a bogus skill development programs we should stop, and then we should move towards a global class skilling framework. The ministry is working on that. I think the faster we make this transition, the better, and lesser wastage of resources. Friends, I'll just move to educational empowerment. The third part I talked about. As I said, that the GER of this country is 27.1, which basically means that out of 100 people who are in the age group of 18 to 23, only 27 of them are in higher education system. It's a very good barometer to check your developmental levels. Whereas the Europe, they are all around 70, around 60, 70, 50 to 70. So we are half of that. So in what way can we improve the enrollment in the higher education is a big problem. We have not cracked this yet. We have not cracked because we have always thought that higher education is for a job. So you get into BA, BSc, BCom and then aspire for a job. Though वैसा तो jobs तो मिलता ही नहीं है. BA, BSc, BCom को कोई job मिलता ही नहीं है. So when you find that अरे इससे job तो होता नहीं है, then they just sort of branch off, or they just rather sit on the sidelines of the street rather than going to a college. So how can we make the higher education more relevant and more relevant to the economic needs of the country? How we can structure our courses so that the people who are entering this will come out with skills which are required for the economy as a whole. See, the entire NEP, National Education Policy 2020, of which I had I was fortunate to have a good role to prepare. So basically we looked at how NEP can be an instrument for a transformatory change in the higher education system. How we can make again choices. See, we have, suppose if you go BA, so you have certain set of whatever, history, economics, commerce. You don't have any choice. So we tried to bring in a much more flexible system where a student can choose as per his interest. See, if he studies as per his interest, his levels of performance will multiply many times. So without going into NEP, that itself is one whole session. But I think what we need to do is that we need to restructure our higher education system as quickly as possible. We are losing time. In fact, if you are talking about 2047, I think we are late by at least 5 years in restructuring the system. We need to restructure. We need to make it align it with the requirements of the national economy and bring in flexibility and then focus on the quality of education rather than the numbers. I am not going into, because education, if I go in, I'll not come out. So therefore, we'll move to the next. Political empowerment has been one very major task before us. How do we empower the people from these disadvantaged sections so that they occupy the same space? They should share the space on equal footing. They have numbers. They have aspirations, but they don't have confidence. So how do we bring up their confidence levels so that they can occupy positions of leadership without any prop or without any push? This is one aspect which needs to be studied. But I am very clear that unless the political power is equally shared, without going by the caste equation, unless that happens, there is going to be some of these disadvantages will keep getting perpetrated. So political empowerment, therefore, I think is a very important aspect. I'll just quickly go through the health, and for the health of all of us, people who are feeling bored. Health, of course, is a very important aspect. For me, as important, if not more important than education, because whereas education can uplift the entire household, the health can really bring down the entire household and bring down very rapidly. And in our system, where the health costs are skyrocketing, there is, once you just enter, you just don't know what you have to pay. You are completely, they squeeze the last drop of the blood out of you. The system is like that. And then with all that, we still have MMR and IMR rates which are extremely poor, ranking 80 in the global index. So, and then the disease burden, so many preventable diseases, which can be simply prevented by a little bit of knowledge, diarrhea, sickle cell anemia. So some of this disease burden is actually causing a lot of damage to the poor people, and bringing them further down into poverty or just giving up. So, so we have done substantial thing in this. I think the entire ICDS program, I know there is so much is written about ICDS. I'm sure there are so many PhDs who are produced studying about the ICDS and their impact on the anemia, on the stuntedness. So lots of PhDs are there, and the evidence is very mixed. Provided you are able to do implement the ICDS program well, wherever it has been done well, things have really changed a lot. And there are I know there are states who actually supplement a lot to the ICDS, so as to and they're seeing the levels of anemia and others falling very rapidly. So I think ICDS is one fantastic thing that has happened, and we need to strengthen this further. The National Health Mission, of course, has been one of the biggest programs of the government, expanding the network of the public health institutions. A lot has been happening in this. There are many state level initiatives, which I really find extremely interesting and also encouraging. The many states have actually looked at the health very systematically, and then they have expanded the health network. Ayushman Bharat, of course, all of you have heard, 10 crore people already in, and more will come in, because they are looking at various other ways to make it lot more universal. So Ayushman Bharat implementation, the country is watching with keenness, and I'm sure this will be a game changer, because I have seen the earlier versions of it in my own state called Arogyashri. I mean, it's a phenomenal success. I think when it was introduced, the poor people they used to quickly pass through that 5-star hospital, never even turn that side, lest some money will be charged for looking at it. So I'm just joking. No, they didn't charge, of course. But then the point is that they never aspired to get into that. And for the first time, they were invited, they were provided beds, they were provided care, and then they came out completely dazed. Is it possible? So Arogyasri has been one of the phenomenal successes in the health front, and Ayushman Bharat is definitely going to be better than that, because it has looked at all those experiences, it's brought it a all India character. So Ayushman Bharat effort should help. However, I think there is a lot that we can do with our health system. The mix. How do you reduce the cost of healthcare? That's I think is a fundamental issue. Even if whether it is with Ayushman Bharat or without Ayushman Bharat, how can we reduce the healthcare costs? Can we bring in the Ayurvedic and homeopathic medicines systems integrated with that, so that people can choose very wisely as to, depending on the type of disease that they have, they can choose a lesser cost therapy. And of course the yoga has been India is the place where it is born, and then now it is going global. I think yoga and wellness will have a huge impact. I think I'm not at all underestimating the impact it will have on the reduction in the disease burden across the country. I think wherever the yoga has spread, the overall upkeep of the health of the people has been much better. So I think there is a lot of hope. We have done a lot of work, but I think still I would say that our task is cut out. We have 25 years to go to 2047, and I think in this period we can do wonders. I think if we can just tie up a few of our sectors properly, if we can just redefine our intention to come out of these things, I'm sure India will definitely be a major power in the global scenario, because we have the numbers, we have the brains, we have the resources. So we just got to put our act together and then plug some of the loopholes, and I'm sure this 25 years is going to be a defining period. Thank you very much.
Very good.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your knowledge with us on this today's topic of the Ekam lecture series. I now request our chairman, sir, to please share his valuable thoughts and words. Please, sir.
Let me thank R. Subrahmanyam. I am about to say Professor R. Subrahmanyam for a very comprehensive, very detailed, very systematic lecture on what is that India is doing to ensure inclusiveness. And as he has told us, we are doing very many things in very many fields, and he's actually given us the whole canvas on which we have been working. While he was talking, certain issues that he raised, and he seems to be very passionate about some of those issues, I kept recalling a few incidents that I have come across. And when he was talking about health, I remember once I did a study of suicides in Vidarbha region. And I went from village to village and talked to people what are the causes of suicide. And two were the most prominent causes. First was a desire for irrigation. They'll borrow money, sink a well, will not find water, and then borrow again with the hope that if I can get water from the second one, then I'll be able to pay for the first one. And this could go on 3 times, 4 times, and with that a collapse. And the other major reason they told me about was health. And it was not individual health. Most of the time, it was taking care of the mother, father in the terminal stages, which could, as he said, could bring down your economic status, rapidly decline to that well, 4-5 times you dig a well, maybe you'll end up spending 1 lakh. You take care of one mother, one father in the terminal stages, maybe you will be billed several lakhs. And I still remember because I sat with them and they told me about these issues. When he was talking about education, I remember that I was in a very remote village of a community, Thai Phake community of Assam, on the banks of what is called the Budi Dehing. And this Thai Phake community is very, very significant community because they are a literate community. They, in their own language, literacy is extremely important. So they take literacy from generation to generation in their own language. It's sacred for them to carry this on. And they're so literate that the house in which I was sitting, the lady of the house was a very good poet and novelist because. And then I was sitting in the house for 3-4 hours. Then I came out and was standing on the street, and I saw the head of the household coming from somewhere on a cycle with a child. So I asked him, "Where are you coming from?" And he said, "I've come from Naharkatia." Naharkatia is about 10 kilometers or 7-8 kilometers from there. They said, "Why did you go there?" "No, I wanted to take this child, I'll go and leave this child there in Naharkatia school, which is an English school, every morning and bring her back from there in this cycle in the afternoon." But there are schools here. His own wife was teaching. There was actually secondary school in that same. He says, "But those are SME schools." And हमारा तो काम आसानी से चल गया, आप लोगों से भी बात कर लेते हैं, टूरिस्ट आते हैं उनसे भी बात हो जाती है, इन बच्चों का नहीं चलेगा. तो आई डू दिस. This was a very strange experience for me. For a family which is proud of being literate for generations and generations, for them to acquire literacy through this manner. So I think in addition to all that you said, we have to do something about the medium of instruction in education. It's an extremely serious problem, and somehow we have kept it unresolved. And whenever I think of it, I think of that man, old man going on a cycle in the morning, taking the child to Naharkatia, bringing back, even though there is a school, and not a bad school there. Okay, in fact, in every instance, this SHGs, I did not know till you started mentioning and Amarjit Sinha mentioning that this has been such a success. But I remember that when Jayalalitha started that Amma kitchen scheme, Amma Unvagam, she started, and that's a very important scheme anyway. I went to many of those places, and those she insisted would be run by SHGs of women. And you should see the way those women were running those places, so neat, so clean, and most importantly, so respectful to the people who came to eat there. And they seemed so happy, as if they were running their own family kitchen. So if they thought somebody needs more, so instead of one serving, they'll also give two. And this could be only by women. I don't think any other way you could have run that scheme the way it is. I hope it's still running. We saw it when...
Name is changed.
Name is changed? It's not called Amma Unvagam. I see. Okay. So what Subrahmanyam has told us is that this country, after independence, has put in a very great effort to ensure inclusiveness and to ensure that we remove deprivation, at least frank deprivation, as far as possible from as many people as possible. As he told us, our constitution made various provisions for it. After the constitution, we have actually amended the constitution several times in order to make these provisions much more stronger. We have passed various legislative acts to implement these constitutional arrangements. Politically, a great deal has happened to ensure social equity in the political sphere. And what has been achieved with all these efforts is not small. It's in fact very large. When I was working on this commission on subcategorization of the other backward castes, I have looked at large amount of data. And the data at least shows, and I'm sure people who go to the field, to the institution will also see, that student profile of these high institutions like the IITs, the IIMs, the AIMS, the NITs, is very different than what it would have been in the 70s when I was studying. It's an entirely different profile you will see there. Similarly, I think in the services, you will know better about it, but looks like in the recruitments, you see that the profile is changing. In the political empowerment anyway, because there is the constitution insists on certain equity to be established, and democratic processes on their own have the capability of ensuring that people with numbers will come there. the profile of the parliaments, the legislatures, and now even the panchayats is very different. This, of course, we have been, the social scientists have been recording. At least the political empowerment is recorded, but not this. Not much is being recorded of what we have achieved in education. We have achieved in all that he was telling us. I don't think social scientists have paid very much attention to what India. One of the terms is used that we should celebrate what we have done, and that celebration, whether you call it celebration or documentation, that's the business of the social scientists. And I will insist and request that while we do find flaws here and there and talk about them, we should also talk about this extraordinary achievement that India has made in this 75 years of, and we started achieving it very early, 75 years of independence. It is a very rare achievement. It doesn't happen so easily in the world. If for the black people in America to get their rights, it took a civil war. And it was a very, very serious civil war. It's a very bloody civil war. It can be, even today is compared with amongst the most bloody wars in the world. It was a very serious war. And till now you have to, the same kind of violence occurs to achieve. We have achieved this without violence. It's all through legal, bureaucratic, political, legislative processes that we are achieving this. There's hardly any violence that is involved in the process. And I keep wondering that if it has been achieved in India and doesn't happen so easily in the rest of the world, there must be something in the Indian way of being or Indian thought processes that this is acceptable. And from what I know, in fact, this invitation that is sent you, I put a quote from the Ramayana, Valmiki's Ramayana, where when Ramchandraji decides to perform an Ashwamedha towards the end of his life, once he makes the Sankalpa, he calls Lakshmana and tells him, जाओ सबको आमंत्रित करके आओ. And it's not, no varga is defined. It says everybody must be invited, and once invited, he must be respected, honored, fed. He should go back. Sammanit, tushta, pushta, sammanita is how he should go back. And this description keeps coming. Today, Joshiji has not come, he always comes. And when he called me when he saw this invitation, and he said that there are hundreds of such instances. And Ramayana itself, when much before this yajna, when Dashratha is doing the yajna, he is giving the same instruction. Call all Kshatriyas, call all Brahmanas, call all Shudras, call all Vaishyas, and call them in a dignified manner and let them go back dignified. And as far as deprivation is concerned, I will close at this, but Indian texts, their position is, Bhishma's position in Mahabharata is that the king who tolerates deprivation of children or of anybody else is not worth being allowed to be stayed there. There is a very strong term used that such a king, the people should get together and throw him away like a mad dog. That's the kind of terms that Bhishma is using while advising Yudhishthira as how the state is to be run. And there's this Apstamba Sutra, which is saying to the king that if in your kingdom there's one person who is suffering from क्षुधा हेमात आपत रोग. इनमें से किसी से भी even this kind of deprivation, he is hungry, he is not sheltered against the climbs, or he is unhealthy. And if this happens because of his personal abhava, or because of the intent of the king to punish him, from either of these things it happens, that kingdom must not survive. That's the Apstam Sutra. So this, while we are doing all this, we should remember that we are able to do this without as much effort, as much violence that other societies have to put in, because this is that kind of society. We unfortunately, this is one of the misfortunes of India, and our social scientists have been adding to it, that we do not fully celebrate, fully appreciate what we have been doing in 75 years. And while doing it, we'll keep saying that it was this kind of country, we are trying to make it better. The fact of the situation, as the Chinese always say, is their country or our country, they were great countries. There was a small period of colonization and slavery when we went down and when we acquired all kinds of errors. That period is gone. And as soon as we have achieved independence, we have attended to it. And we should be happy about it, we should celebrate it, and we should keep listening to people like Subrahmanyam telling us how much we are doing. And our social scientists should also keep documenting what all this society has been doing to undo deprivation, to undo social inequity, and to make education health available to all. We have done a lot. We need to do a lot more. And certainly the way we are going, we will be, when we, I know how many of us will meet after 25 years from now, when we are celebrating the 100th anniversary of Indian independence. I think at that point, as is being now said, all these things will be behind us. As he said, at that point there will be no deprivation, and we will perhaps not need a Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment.
Correct.
Thank you. Namaskar.
I now request Professor Bajaj for felicitating Shri R. Subrahmanyam ji.
I am giving you a book on Datia district.
You told me about this.
It's worth keeping.
Considering it is time for the vote of thanks, and I would like to request Dr. Ajay Gupta sir to please give that. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Respected Shri R. Subrahmanyam ji, Secretary, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India. Our Honorable Chairman, Professor J.K. Bajaj ji. Our Member Secretary, Professor V.K. Malhotra ji. All the distinguished and eminent social scientists present here, including Shri Gyanendra ji. We have got our council member, Professor Kanak Sabhapati ji, and all my colleagues from ICSSR. I just thank you for participating in this lecture. This lecture series is not something new to ICSSR. I think most of my colleagues those who are present here, they remember that we used to have this lecture series under the umbrella of Vikram Sarabhai Memorial Lecture. So we used to organize this series, and we have distinguished speakers like our late President Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. He also delivered under this series, and the lecture was organized at Vigyan Bhavan. I remember that he gave us the time of only 10-20 minutes. He said ki I will speak only for 10-20 minutes, but he was there for 2 hours, sir. And the whole traffic was blocked, and everybody was worried because you cannot move out, and the whole traffic was blocked. So these kind of lectures have taken place in the past, and sir, we are extremely thankful to you, sir, for restarting this series under this ACOM program, that is Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. Sir, I think my job has been done, sir, easier by our honorable chairman. So most of the points, sir, you have already covered, and I know that's very difficult to sit late after this lecture. But I would definitely pay my thanks to Shri R. Subrahmanyam ji, who is associated both with us and with ICSSR for a very long period. He himself looked after Impress program, and then after that also he kept on guiding us on various aspects. Sir, we not only just have these lectures, but we try to document also, sir. So in the past we have published these lectures as monographs, and sir, I think under your guidance and with your support, I think we should be able to. We have already held 2 lectures under this series, sir. One was by Shri Amarjit Sinha ji, former Principal Scientific Advisor to PMO, and now this is second lecture by Shri R. Subramaniam ji.
We had one by Vijay.
Yeah, so that was foundation lecture, sir.
First one.
Yeah, first one was. So now this is third in the series, sir. And sir, as rightly you have covered almost all the aspects of social justice, sir, and you have very rightly has now given the vision that for another 25 years, our Honorable Prime Minister ji has already announced his program for 2047, and whatever is to be done in next 25 years, I think you have also shown us the roadmap for that, and you have rightly mentioned about the 5 dimensions, sir. All the 5 dimensions which needs to be covered in the time to come. So I won't elaborate on those points, sir, but your lecture will definitely set an agenda for our future plans also, and we would keep on taking, sir, your help also while devising some of our programs in future also. And sir, basically our whole program of ICSSR and its various schemes, they are just around all these points only. And sir, you have rightly said that now the time has come when we have to look for poverty alleviation, empowerment of women, empowerment of our SCs, STs, communities, and then the tribes, and in particular the women and children. See, our women who constitute 50% of our population, I think now the time has come when we have to empower them. So I think we should be able to now take help of all the legislations, where we are, I think, very good at preparing or making the legislations. But sir, as you have rightly said, that implementation part is very important, which varies from person to person, state to state. So that needs to be taken care. So once that is done, I think then our country will be Vishwaguru. Definitely. We have been in the past, but I think in the time to come, we will be Vishwaguru. And so, sir, I again thank you all for being present here. And please keep on looking at our website, because next lecture is also following very soon. I think on 9th of September, we are going to have next lecture. So, sir, thank you very much for attending this lecture. So, thank you very much and good night.
Which one?
So what's the